Yes, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, then we'll swear all the new members in.
Okay, because I got one other from Skillings, but that's the guys.
Yeah, sure. Wherever you would like.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have to rename it, I don't think I can find it. If you want to call it Skillings Drew, you can call it Skillings Drew.
Oh, you know what I'll do is I'll create a folder within here saying Drew, and then we know where you are. How's that, sir?
That's super.
Excellent. All right, let me give you your thumb drive back.
Yeah, I think
So-
it's on this way.
What's that?
Tape getting removed. No
There you go, sir.
I don't know. I mean, I always hate it when it's dark up here, but this is probably more than we need. But I don't know. It's all right. Well, get them to. You can get them to turn them off. That's fine with me. Hi. Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay, that's great. So I'll just call the meeting to order, and then I'll introduce you to the pledge, and then step right up there and do right ahead.
The only thing I got. So if it's not conference ready, I'm in big trouble.
That's why you want to dust it off.
Oh, that's not good. Well, can we? Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So when do they do the flag? After the pledge or before? Okay. Okay. I don't really care. They just don't want them in front of the cameras. So that's fine. So are the girls ready? Okay.
I think it's because it's with Oliver. It's on Main Street, Red Buick, near Black Horse Terrace. Red Buick sedan near Black Horse Terrace.
The girls are ready. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the town meeting. I'm informed that we have a quorum, and I'm pleased to introduce to bring the colors down and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance the members of Girl Scout Troop 77025, who are accompanied this evening by their troop leader, Ellie Goki. And I'm pleased to introduce to you the student leader of the pledge this evening, Elizabeth Rosmaneth. Elizabeth.
Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to start the opening flag ceremony. Please rise and turn your attention to the back of the auditorium. Color Guard, attention. Color Guard, advance. Color Guard, present the colors. Color Guard, post the colors. Color Guard, salute the colors. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Color Guard, retreat. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention. Please now turn your attention to the town meeting moderator, Mr. Peter Haley.
Everything else should go so smoothly. Thank you very much to the members of the Girl Scout Troop and Elizabeth. That was a great job. Just following on with some additional protocol. For those of you who have been elected to the town meeting as of the March 31st, 2015 election, I would now like you to take the oath of office to which you've been elected. If those of you who have just been elected could please rise. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all the duties of the office to which I have been elected in accordance with the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the Charter and bylaws of the town of Winchester. Thank you very much. As we start the town meeting this evening, as we sometimes do, I just wanted to call the meeting's attention to a few matters of note that have taken place since we last met. First of all, I would like to extend the appreciation of the meeting to Jay Gill, the leader of the Department of Public Works, and all of the men and the women who work for them for the tremendous work that they have done for all of us over the last few months of the winter that we have encountered. They were out there night and day and have done a great job for the town and for all of us who use the roads and streets. So thank you very much. We also noted with sadness recently the passing of a gentleman who worked in this building or in this school, the McCall Middle School, for 31 years. Jim McConaughey, Mr. Mack, was a 7th grade social studies teacher, led a geography program that inspired many to go on to the Geography B. In addition to his work here in this building, he also served as the high school softball coach for the girls softball team at the high school. He was a great leader and a testament to the great work that's done by all the men and women teaching in our public schools. Since we last met as well, we have suffered the loss of somebody who meant so much to all of us, our dear friend Sarah Swiger. Sarah served on the Winchester School Committee for some 16 years. She also was a member of this meeting for 20 years. She was the person who went to all those meetings that those of us who found ourselves too busy during the day or otherwise too involved in other activities somehow couldn't find the time to get to. Sarah went to all of those meetings, faithfully attended them, reported back, and helped lead the committee and the meeting in terms of steering us to great outcomes for the children of Winchester. She provided all of us and the students who have gone through the public school system in the last 16 years a tremendous value. Her husband, Bill, is here with us this evening. I think those of us who have served in town office realize that it's one thing to be the person going to the meetings and freely offering our opinions. It's another to be the person who stays behind, taking care of the homework, the dishes, the meals, and all those less important things. Those people serve as well, and Bill was certainly a testament to that model. I think those of us who called the Swiger household regularly often heard Bill's cheery voice informing us that, yes, Sarah was out at yet another meeting. Sarah was someone who we'll miss greatly, but who will serve as an exemplar for all of us in the type of service that we recognize. Recently, the Globe, in line with other media, and I guess modern society in general, has taken to measuring our community by the number of people who report a certain income on their tax returns. I think those of us in this meeting know that the way we measure our community is by our commitment to each other. No one was more emblematic of that commitment to all of us and to everybody in the town than Sarah. I'd like to just take a minute of a moment of silence in memory of Sarah, if you could join me. Thank you very much. Congratulations to those who were recently elected to the Board of Selectmen and the Planning Board, and thank you to all of you who ran and competed in those races. We appreciate the service that you have given by entering the arena, and we appreciate those who have stepped up to take those positions. Just a little bit of guidance as to the conduct of this meeting. Those of you who complained about the rapidity of my cadence at the Fall Town meeting and the one-night meeting that we had, giving short shrift to the important things before us, wishing that we could have a longer meeting, this is your time. We will, this evening we will hear introductory remarks from the various board personnel. We'll then take a short adjournment to elect precinct captains and the like, and a couple of vacancies in 2 precincts over in the gymnasium. Following that, we'll return here, convene the special town meeting to undertake the 4 articles before us under the special town meeting. We will complete that this evening, move on to Article 2 in the regular town meeting. On Thursday night of this week, we will get to, if we don't start it this evening, the Central Business District rezoning issues, and we'll move through any other non-financial issues. On Monday, May 4th, we will start our consideration of the budget. We'll go through as much of the budget, potentially all of it if we're able to, on May 4th. We will then be in an adjournment until May 14th, Thursday, May 14th. We have a couple of intervening town matters and other calendar items that interfere there. We'll return on May 14th to complete the immediate business before us, with one exception, and that is that it's likely at the end of the 14th, if we meet on that evening, we'll take a motion to adjourn for an additional 2 weeks till May 28th. That time period should afford the Board of Selectmen and others who are in the midst of reviewing information and forming recommendations on Article 31, the Right Lock Farm disposition to complete their work and to present the meeting a greater body of knowledge to allow more informed debate on those issues. We'll then finish up, hopefully, in the month of May and be through. It's, as you can tell from that schedule, there are a lot of very important and weighty matters before us in this meeting, important to all of us who serve in the town, but important to the whole community as well. It's going to be critical that we continue to have a quorum here and that all of us continue to stay engaged and participate in the meeting as we go forward. That having been said, that brings us to the preliminary motions before this meeting. It's moved and seconded that the following preliminary motions be voted as one: that Richard Howard, Town Manager, Stacy Ward, Comptroller, Wade Welch, Town Council, Mark Toogood, Assistant Town Manager, who are not town meeting members, be permitted to sit at the front of the auditorium with the Board of Selectmen during all sessions of this town meeting; that all members of the Finance Committee and their secretary, whether town meeting members or not, be permitted to sit together at the front of the auditorium during all sessions of this town meeting; that the town clerk or her designee or the assistant town clerk be permitted to occupy a desk on the platform during all sessions of this meeting; that the moderator be authorized to permit members of various town boards, commissions, committees, department heads, and petitioners of special articles to sit at the front of the auditorium during consideration of appropriate articles; that unless it be otherwise ordered, all adjourned sessions of this town meeting shall be held on successive Thursday and Monday evenings at 7:30 p.m. in the McCall Middle School auditorium until the work of this town meeting is completed; that action on all motions involving appropriation shall be contingent upon compliance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 21C, a law known as the 2.5 tax limitation, and that cable television coverage be shall permitted at all sessions of this town meeting. The motion having been moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. That brings us to Article 1, which is the reports from various town boards and committees. The first report this evening is from the Board of Selectmen, led by Mr. Jim Johnson. Jim.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. Town meeting members, members of various boards and committees, and citizens of Winchester. My name is Jim Johnson. Hello? Good evening, town meeting members, members of various boards and committees, and citizens of Winchester. My name is Jim Johnson. I am the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Last month, two board members stepped down from the board, Jennifer Wilson and Forrest Fontana. I wish them a lot of luck. They gave us great years of service, and I thoroughly enjoyed working with them. They will be missed by all. We are fortunate tonight to have two new members, Michael Bentoncourt and Jim Whitehead, to replace them, with the existing members, Lance Grenzebeck and Steve Powers. The board's major incentives in the last year has been the implementation of the downtown parking, the preposition of the 2017 budget, implementing changes in the health care insurance of our retirees, further the downtown's flood mitigation program, including a comprehensive plan for the Skillings Field, including environmental, flood mitigation, and recreational, and disposition of Lockwright Farm. The construction of the Winchester High School continues under the EFPBC. There are many important decisions facing this town meeting, starting tonight with the special town meeting. A carefully thought-out plan to address flood mitigation, environmental impact, and improve the recreational quality of the people of Winchester is on the table tonight, along with the combined efforts of the EFPBC dealing with the final phase of high school construction with their planned improvements in the field. I am pleased to report the progress on the flood mitigation continues forward. With the completion of the widening of the Mystic Valley Parkway, Aberdona Channel, repairs to the Central Falls Dam are finally completed. In the summer, the Craddock Locks in Medford will be started by the Mass DOT. As stated last year, the town of Winchester received a grant for $2.5 million, which will go towards improving the Scully Dam and the construction of Mount Vernon Street Bridge. This will happen in the fall. With the completion of these projects, along with the Skilling Field project, that leaves only two flood mitigation projects to go, Swanton Street Bridge and the Morocco Dam. The board requests your support on these very important projects in the coming years. Another important decision facing this town meeting will be the disposition of the Lockwright Farm. The board has spent many hours and considerable time in preparation of an RFP that we hope will provide a balance of open space and financial return. The board is in the process of finalizing our final proposals, and we hope to make a presentation to this board at the May 28th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Cindy Boney, who's the chairman of the Winchester School Committee. Ms. Boney.
Forward, back, that would be blanket. And it's on, it's got all these in
Good evening. This is a dynamic and a really pivotal time for the Winchester schools. And if you listen for just one moment before you all fade out, and if you walk away tonight with two messages, these are what I hope they will be. First, with the tremendous and unwavering support of the community, Winchester continues to be a high-performing, hard-driving, highly respected school district. It's built on hard work and tough choices. But standing still is falling behind, and as we surge forward, we must be mindful that our students, our schools, and even our teachers are showing increasing signs of stress, and these pressures can derail us if we don't take an eye on them. Second, change is coming to the superintendent's office, and our continued success depends on you, on this body, on all the community stakeholders, and I ask each of you to consider yourselves key partners as we embrace and prepare for the transition. The priority of the schools today is and always will be the students, about 4,500 strong this year if you consider preschoolers. They are bright. On average, Winchester students are challenged and they perform well above others on MCAS, AP exams, SATs, and other academic assessments. Several each year are recognized nationally as scholars, and our Winchester High School seniors just now are continuing to receive acceptances at many of the country's top colleges. But we're also seeing a trend where our students with high needs, those that are low income, students with disabilities, English language learners, are not keeping pace with their peers. And we need to address this increasing gap in performance. Our students are talented and engaged. We are grateful for the continuous support of businesses, nonprofits, foundations, and parents. Each year, we rely on hundreds of thousands of dollars in outside grants, gifts, and quite frankly, dump runs that fund technology in our classrooms, equipment for athletes, all of our field trips at the elementary grades, service learning projects, after-school clubs. There are so many activities around which students develop competencies, build friendships, make memories, and they thrive. But all these academic achievements, national competitions, athletic events, take their toll too. And there are clear warning signs that our children are under tremendous stress. We are witnessing trends of self-harm and very risky behavior. We must identify and prioritize programs to keep all students healthy, not just challenged. As you know, Bill McAuliffe will be leaving us this summer after 8 years. Bill is a numbers guy, so if you'll indulge me, I'm going to do a brief numeric reflection on his time here in Winchester. In the 1,480 days that he's been our leader, he will have recognized 2,100 high school graduates and 2,600 McCall graduates. If a superintendent is in fact a superhero, certainly his powers are making school days disappear. We've had 36 snow days. I think most of them were this year. Prioritizing communications with stakeholders, he has attended just shy of 800 evening meetings and 16 town meetings. An unparalleled number of young families continue to move into town, and Bill has been intensely engaged in the oversight of 10 major capital projects and total project budgets of $181 million. The most significant, Winchester High School, remains on time and on budget, but I'll allow the EFPBC to speak to that. But I believe, Bill, wherever you are out there, your greatest legacy is the many dedicated and exceptional people that you have brought to Winchester. 1,040 teachers, administrators, and staff, including all of our central office, all 7 school principals, and all except for 2 assistant principals have been hired under your watch. And these talented professionals will help us pivot and prepare for the next decade. For this, our debt of thanks and best wishes for your next task, counting strokes, not students, on the golf course. I hope you will all help me in a round of applause for Bill. I'd like to introduce you to Judy Evans. Dr. Judy Evans is our next leader, our new sachem, and she will begin on July 1st. Judy is here tonight, and I'd like to ask her to stand. She's in the corner in the dark, in the audience. Members, introduce yourself to her. Get to know her. She has remarkable talents that she's going to be bringing to Winchester. She's a fierce advocate for students and an exceptional curriculum leader. Her success will be our success. Schools are not what many of us remember. We use words like least restrictive environment, differentiation, co-teaching, and district-determined metrics. Instruction and curriculum today must be agile, it must be impactful and data-driven. Our budget, as you will hear, will reflect these needs. But we will continue to rely on you, town meeting members, as we set our course and define success. So tune in, ask questions, ask what it means to be a successful student today, and help us determine what high-quality instruction will demand of us. And as our world and students change, the Winchester schools will strive to innovate, to collaborate whenever possible, and to provide all students with an outstanding but healthy education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Evans. Welcome to Winchester. Bill McAuliffe, thank you very much. The Finance Committee, Mr. Malconian.
Thanks. Yeah, forward, back. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, town meeting members. Tonight we will present the general budget framework, including the background information and the process used in the fiscal budget review. Also, we will identify the budget savings, together with challenges, including long-term liabilities. I first want to thank the heads of the various departments, the Board of Selectmen, the members of the school committee, the superintendent of schools, the town manager and assistant town manager, the town controller, and all of their staff. Their cooperation over the past few months in reviewing the budgets have been invaluable to us in the Finance Committee. When reviewing the fiscal year budget, we take a number of things into consideration, one of them being adherence to the operating reserve policy established by the Board of Selectmen. To meet the operating reserve policy, recurring revenues must fund recurring expenses, and the operating reserve balance must be between 6 and 10% of revenues. We must produce a balanced budget, balancing revenues and expenses. We begin the budget review by looking at prior year budgets and funding level services for all departments, and then looking at any requested additions to those budgets. If we live within the mandates of Proposition 2.5, typically the town is able to provide current level services going forward with current projected revenues. This, of course, assumes no large spikes in inflation and no unexpected expenses. The Finance Committee considers level services funding to include funding benefits, which include pensions, other post-employment benefits, or OPEB, unemployment compensation, Medicare tax, and workers' compensation. We see some favorable changes in expenses compared to fiscal year 2015. Again, the most positive impact being in the town's health insurance costs, modest premium increases, premium contribution level changes in retirees, and slowed rates of new member participation in the town's health plan yielded a reduction of a little over $393,000. We felt important again this year to use much of these savings to pay for the OPEB annual required contribution, or ARC, which is a motion within Article 8 that we will vote next week. We saw an over $26,000 reduction in the vocational education assessment over last year, which is a reduction of 15%. The conversion of town facilities from oil to natural gas systems has worked to overall stem the expected increases in the expenses for heating and domestic hot water systems. The LED streetlights that were installed last year through hard work of the Energy Management Committee are proving to reduce electricity usage charges. We saw another year of reduced solid waste disposal fees due not only to increased recycling rates from single-stream recycling, but also due to the Department of Public Works entering into a new, cheaper fee agreement for solid waste disposal. Although we saw the snow and ice budget experience a large overrun beyond $400,000 this year, we expect that we'll be partially reimbursed by FEMA for some of the emergency snow events. At this Springtown meeting, the Capital Planning Committee and the Town Manager are co-sponsoring an article for the establishment of capital maintenance article to be available to evaluate the useful life of rolling stock and building systems. If approved by town meeting members, the hope is that the use of this fund will enable the DPW, the Capital Planning Committee, and the town manager to identify small infrastructure problems and prevent them from becoming larger, more costly issues. Of course, there are stresses on the budget for this fiscal year and moving forward. As the result of the governor's budget, the town manager's estimate for state aid has been decreased by a little over $91,000. Although the final amount approved by the legislature will likely increase the amount of state aid, we are not expecting it to be a large increase over the governor's budget. The $600,000 estimated projection in new growth revenue is higher than usual, but lower than in the past 2 years. On the capital side, we continue to see both capital and building stabilization funds to be almost fully committed to paying for debt service on previously bonded projects. A major challenge we continue to face is that there are no available funds within the current operating budget for major capital projects, including environmental remediation and flood mitigation. As we look at a new round of contract negotiations in the next year, we need to be cognizant that contractual wage increases are the major driver in budget increases, and any increases that run beyond the scope of 2.5% are not sustainable against projected growth in revenues. The effect of debt on the town's bond rating is also a very important consideration. First Southwest estimated that for each bond rating downgrade, the interest rate for borrowing by the town will increase by 25 basis points, creating an estimated increase in interest costs of approximately $2.2 million over 20 years. This is important to keep in mind as we will see a considerable amount of permanent financing coming online over the next few years, including for the high school project and the remaining debt on the Right Lock Farm, and any additional projects such as environmental remediation or flood mitigation projects, some of which we'll discuss at special town meeting tonight. The outstanding debt balance of the town for fiscal year 2014, the most recent number was $62.5 million. Fiscal year 2015 and beyond debt balances will increase significantly with permanent bonding for the high school, Right Lock Farm, and any other capital projects that are voted.
Mr. Melconian, your time has expired. Would you like more time?
Could I have 3 more minutes, please?
It's moved and seconded that the speaker's time be extended for 3 minutes. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Please continue.
Thank you. The town's unfunded pension liability from the January 2013 report is a little over $25.5 million, which is an increase of 58% over 2011. And the 2013 OPEB liability report was for $60 million, which is a significant reduction from prior reports due majorly to plan changes. Later this year, we will see the new report for the town's OPEB liability. The Finance Committee remains committed to funding the OPEB ARC, and we urge the town to develop a policy with this stated goal. Contractual obligations that rise above 2.5% are unsustainable with the current revenue model. As we vote any override, both in town meeting and townwide, we should be aware that any additional $1 million override will add $130 to the average real estate tax bill over 20 years. This is not meant as a statement to criticize the validity of any proposed override, but rather as a disclosure to town meeting members and voters as to the very real impacts that our votes have. We will see and continue to have some very important and necessary proposals for projects that will require overrides to fund them, and we need to balance the funding of these projects with an eye on how the funding will affect the taxpayers. We will continue to see competing priorities in the town as the current and projected revenues will see limited growth. The town needs to concentrate on long-term planning for known debts, liabilities, and obligations. And we also need to look at ways in which we can identify cost savings and cost avoidance early on. The Finance Committee is not proposing a general operating override at this time. However, we do stress that as the new contract negotiations begin, we need to remain within the current revenue projections. As expenses increase beyond the level of revenues, our choices are to cut costs or increase revenues. Both have trade-offs that we as a town need to evaluate. In closing, I just want to take a minute to thank my fellow members on the Finance Committee. Each one of them brings something really special to the committee, and I feel really privileged to have worked with them. And I especially want to thank Michelle Pryor, who was, as you know, was last year's Finance Committee chair, and she stayed on for the end of her term. And her experience and guidance was a huge help to all of us, especially to me. And lastly, but not least, I want to thank Vicki Drugas, who was our recording secretary for the Finance Committee for over 20 years. And her experience and professionalism was really greatly appreciated, and we wish her the best of luck in her new position with the town. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Malconian. The Planning Board is next up. Mrs. Gregor.
Just that one, correct?
There we go.
Forward and back.
Forward, back. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, fellow town meeting members. You may well be wondering what the Planning Board has been up to this year. What could that be? Well, actually, we've had a lot of things that we've been involved with. We've been involved with the MBTA's plans to rebuild Winchester Center, the center railroad station here, the Right Lock Farm development recommendations for the Board of Selectmen, and also looking at the Heritage District proposed by the residents of the Rangeley Road area, and that will be coming up later on this evening. And last, but hardly least, and long awaited, the rezoning effort for Winchester Center Business District. We met approximately 40 times this year, at some times lasting as long as 5 hours, to carefully define and characterize the changes on what we've been looking at for the zoning. Ta-da, drum roll. And with finance just over, we certainly hope that future development will actually lead to increases in property taxes over the next 10 to 20 years. So, lots of hours, lots of consulting time, and lots of grant money being spent, but we think that we've come up with a good workable solution. Why did we do this anyway? Why focus on the CBD? Well, first of all, the zoning is actually badly out of date. What we have in our current zoning bylaw is essentially 1930 zoning that was updated piecemeal in the 1950s and the 1970s, but it has not been, hasn't really been particularly effective in increasing development. For example, mixed-use residential housing, that is, shops on the first floor, apartments and condos on upper floors, is not allowed as of right today, and the permitting process is onerous as well. What are the results? We've had all of 2 developments in the past 30 years. Well, what are our goals? We're looking to increase business opportunities for shops, restaurants, and service businesses by allowing for mixed-use housing development, real mixed-use housing development. And 2, to put in place a review process that will ensure that new construction will maintain the character of the town center and work visually with the town center's best historic buildings. We also have related zoning articles. Article 4 will move several commercial parcels into the CBD district. Article 5 will shift several residential parcels out of the CBD into the abutting residential districts along the north side of Church Street. Article 6 will make technical corrections to other sections in the zoning bylaw to conform with Article 3. And believe me, we are so glad that now the zoning bylaw is actually digitally searchable. It makes all the difference in the world to us. Makes life a lot easier. So, we have a combined goal statement to enhance the economic and social vitality of the Center Business District while maintaining the aesthetic quality of our downtown village. Most of all, people really care about Winchester's downtown. We've done surveys. We've had both marketing for housing as well as marketing demand studies done. And surveys say that people move and stay to Winchester for a lot of different reasons. Of course, we have excellent schools. We've heard about that already tonight. We have ready access to public transportation. In fact, what we're working on is a smart growth model, and much of our work was accomplished through funding from the Smart Growth Alliance through the MAPC. And, not last but not least, the welcoming character of our town center. In short, what we've had to do here, we have a group of things that we think is really going to work well. As with any zoning proposal, we don't anticipate that it will be accepted and welcomed by everybody. Trying to get a zoning proposal that everybody agrees on, believe me, is practically an impossibility. However, we believe that we have been able to really meet the goals that we have set for ourselves. And so, we're allowing market forces to create new development within the CBD. The town is not going to be building this, but we are hoping that we are setting up zoning that will be amenable to future development by creating full multi-use development. And while at the same time preserving the historic character and the essence of the center that we all love. Thank you very much. We look forward to your support. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Kreger. Next up, the library trustees, the Board of Library Trustees, through its chair, Mr. French, John French.
Mr. Moderator, Town Manager, members of boards and committees, town meeting members, and Winchester citizens. My name is John French, and I'm the chair of the Library Board. And other members of our board include Ingrid Geis, Elizabeth Cooper, Jane Murray, and Joan Weiritz. Your library is a uniquely positive institution in town. You don't have to pay taxes there, you don't have to dispute parking tickets, and you don't call the library in emergencies. Instead, we provide books, magazines, videos, music, museum passes, story hours, reference assistance, internet access, a homework center, business materials, lectures, art exhibits, meeting rooms, downloadable ebooks, streaming videos, free delivery of books to shut-ins, and all of it free of charge. Winchester is well known for its educational excellence, and your library is a key part in this perception that makes our town so desirable. But I'd like to take a couple minutes just to update you on some of the new changes in the library since last year's Springtown meeting. First of all, we're open more. Last year we added Saturdays in the summer, and this year we began to keep the children's room open 1 hour later on weekdays, which has been a great help to working parents. And what's new at the library? Well, patrons can now stream free videos, like Netflix, I might add, and music, as well as download music that can be kept on portable devices. I might add, our professional librarians offer individual assistance with downloading and streaming. If you have a new device, we can help you. And by the way, we now have online library card registration, which allows Winchester non-card holders to get access to these online services immediately and then just drop into the library to get an actual card. With a gift from a generous donor, we purchased a very good scanner, so it's now easy to scan books, documents, and photos and send them to email accounts, USB drives, or a cloud service of your choice, all free. Finally, we've completed the digitization of the Winchester Star from 1901 to 1951, and it can be accessed through our website. You can now find out whether last year's winter really was the worst in 100 years, and you can find out online. This fall, Winchester Reads, our town-wide book club founded through a grant from the John and Mary Murphy Foundation, will be in its 14th consecutive year. And by the way, this year's book is Learning to Die in Miami, Confessions of a Refugee Boy by Carlos Eyre. And this book's, there'll be a book talk by the author on October 20th, and that's always a popular event. But probably the biggest changes this year were in the children's library. As I mentioned, the children's library is now open for 1 more hour on weeknights, and last year's town meeting voted funds for an additional children's librarian to support these hours. Fortuitously, this allowed us to plan another day of children's programming. We now have children's programming 6 days a week. And by the way, all the content of these programs is funded by generous contributions from the Friends of the Library. We were very pleased to receive a Sciences Everywhere federal grant for almost $8,000, which we used to fund Legos, the little plastic blocks, Legos science workshops for children in grades 2 to 5, and Legopalooza for even younger children. As you may guess, these programs are extremely popular. ROAR, our Rush Out and Read program, will be in its 23rd year this summer. And last year, summer volunteers, mostly high school kids, put in over 800 hours spreading the joy of reading to over 4,600 kids in town in locations such as the Farmers Market, Beauregard Beach, in front of Starbucks, and other public venues. And in addition, last year, 750 children also participated in the Children's Room Summer Reading Program, and this was the largest enrollment in that program we've ever had. Lastly, the number of school visits by our children's librarians have greatly increased, and we feel that this coordination between the library and the schools is very important. Our children's staff was also involved with their mentoring program at the schools, with Mathemania, and with a 4th grade Reading Rocks program, for which we bought dozens of copies of the Reading Rocks books. We also continue to support community groups. Again, this year we were involved with the Winchester Foundation for Educational Excellence, ENCA, the Family Action Network, and the Multicultural Network, to name just a few. But my comments tonight wouldn't be complete without a thank you to the people and groups that make our library the vibrant place that it really is. We particularly note the over 2,200 hours donated by our library volunteers. Also, we want to thank the Friends of the Library for their steadfast support, the Winchester Cooperative Bank, which funds the ROAR program, the Murphy Educational Foundation, ENCA, and Rotary, all of whom provide generous support. Also this year, we have an article, Article 28, on the warrant. We ask you to accept a bequest from the estate of Robert Beatty, a past Winchester resident who generously left us funds in trust for the purchase of science and engineering books. It's a very generous gift, and we ask for your support. In closing, your library continues to be in excellent shape, due in large part to the strong support of all of you and our town government, the dedication of our excellent staff, and the involvement of all of you, the citizens of Winchester. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. The town manager, Richard Howard. Mr. Howard.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, town meeting members. Happy spring 2015 town meeting. I apologize in advance for any repetitiveness. All of the speakers up here usually do get the opportunity to cover in advance some of the topics that I will mention, but this will attempt to be a very concise overview of many of the matters that you'll have before you later on in this spring town meeting. The 2016 budget, as Jay has mentioned, and let me congratulate and compliment the FinCom for doing the very detailed, excellent job that they usually do at taking a look at your proposed town budget each year. But again, it's the fourth in a series of efforts that is based upon the primary goal of sustaining departmental activity at current levels, as Jay has mentioned. All labor contracts are signed, but it's worthy to note that they terminate at the end of FY16 in June of 2016, and will be in negotiation soon to negotiate their successors. Healthcare costs continue a positive trend. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the annual budget, but Jay has given you some overview on that. There are several limited initiatives within the budget in the spring warrant that I would just note for your future attention. The continued developments within the Human Resource Office, strategic preventative maintenance proposal, Article 21, that Jay also touched upon, a noise mitigation study, which our office is asking you to consider, Article 28, continued implementation of the parking program, which we are also asking you to consider, Article 27. We'll talk about that going forward. The reserves are utilized within acceptable policy limits. The 2015 activity, Article 20, reflects this record-breaking winter that we had, and the requests that you'll have for funding considerations under that are almost all devoted toward having us catch up on departmental activity within FY15, within the winter time. And again, I would repeat the moderator's compliment to our DPW team that did an excellent job, janitors as well, school teachers as well. It was a really rough winter all around for parents, children, and even town managers, and we thank everybody for their effort to get us through those 6 weeks that were particularly tough. Additional considerations to look at down the road, not necessarily part of this town meeting, but will be the water and sewer rate decisions that the Board of Selectmen will have to make sure that that budget is balanced. Stormwater regulatory compliance cost may be in our windshield, depending upon what the federal government and EPA does about those kinds of regulatory matters. Our office has provided a budgetary projection sheet, which you should have gotten as you came in to the meeting this evening, and that will help you consider and deliberate on some of the matters in 2016. So we hope you get a copy of that if you haven't already. Additional initiatives. Again, an overview. You have 3 major topics of consideration before you in this town meeting, all of which the outcomes we in the town manager's office would support. Skillings Field, Wrightlock Farm, Article 31, and Town Center rezoning. Article 3, hopefully we'll have information before you that will have you act positively on the recommended activity there. There are multiple ongoing projects that take place. Some of these appear in last year's report, some are new to this year, and some will appear in next year's. But the Winchester High School Phase 2 implements this June. We congratulate the EFPBC for the great work it's done in bringing you something that is on time and on budget, as your school committee chair has noted. The public safety building project is ongoing now. You see the scaffolding out there on Mount Vernon Street. The bridge project, the culvert project at Mount Vernon Street Bridge, and the Scally Dam projects will get underway this construction season. The Tri-Community Bikeway project will get underway this year with the construction documents being put out by Mass Highway and the federal DOT folks. Columbarium project is underway. South Reservoir Gate project, we need your assistance in a town meeting article this spring to continue to have that project be on its trajectory. The Mass Highway will bring forward the Cambridge Street project. The MBTA Town Center Commuter Station proposal is continue to be designed and moved forward by the T folks. There are various other matters, all of which are being worked on independently within the office. Rejenks, although not a town meeting or a town-sponsored initiative, is something that we coordinate with the Jenks trustees on as that moves forward. In closing, I would just repeat some of the points already made. Similar to recent efforts, this annual operating budget is narrowly balanced. As Jay has mentioned, there is not a lot of leeway in the activity that is presented to you. There are no really major initiatives contained here, and if the town is to have enough resources going forward, other than what we've shown you in the budget projections, to do other things, then a potential override may be needed in order to support those kinds of initiatives. Reserves remain at acceptable levels, even with the projected uses and the outlying fiscal years that you'll see in the table. Important to note that we'll have 2 new actuarial studies this year. So we'll get a pension update from PERAC, and we will get an update from our actuarial consultant on the OPEB obligations. Those will plug in important pieces of information for us to consider moving forward. The quality of life, we believe, in the town continues to manifest itself, especially in housing values. Whether it's good information out of DESC for the school committee activity that your school chair noted, or the financial activity that comes out of DOR, we believe that all money that's being spent is returning value to homeowners in Winchester, and we would refer you, for instance, to the smartasset.com report that's out that talks about the value of owning a home in Winchester. So I thank you, Mr. Moderator. Those are the end of my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Howard. The Board of Health is next. The chairperson of the Board of Health, Dave Heinhold. Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, committee members and town meeting members and folks at home. The purpose of this presentation is to bring everyone up to date on the activities of the Board of Health over the last year or so, and also some of the upcoming things that we want to highlight to make sure we take advantage of. The Board of Health has really two types of responsibilities. One relates to health and safety of our citizens, and that's both in terms of ensuring their safety, in terms of aspects such as food establishments, if the camps are run safely, drinking water, and also emergency preparedness in case of a public health emergency. But also, equally important are the prevention efforts, and that includes vaccination clinics, the use of tobacco products, as we'll discuss in a minute, coming up with new bylaws that address the use in youth, and the ongoing struggle with youth addiction issues. Public health programs policy, we have a new policy in 2014, and we've now recently extended the prohibition of sale of any kind of tobacco products, including vapors, to people in Winchester, or establishments in Winchester, unless you're at least 21 years of age. The motivation for this has to do with the period in life when one develops drug addiction, and this is seen by public health professionals as an important step, and hopefully the rest of the state will come in line with this policy. The other thing we are doing in terms of prevention is free checking of ticks for various diseases, including Lyme disease and West Nile virus. And here's people know what a tick looks like. They're obviously much smaller than this, I hope. At least the ones you have to worry about are much smaller than this. And there's just the telltale signature, but not always, but a telltale signature of Lyme disease. This year we tested 44 ticks, and eventually, it did detect both the presence of Lyme disease and West Nile virus. Coming up, past we had collection days for hazardous waste collection, which is very popular. Over 10,000, or 11,000 actually, pounds of waste were collected at the DPW yards last year, and over 500 pounds of medication. That's very important to keep out of not only the the public, but also out of the ecosystem, because disposal of medication, say, in sewers is very bad for the environment. And eventually we all get dosed with something if we do that. There's several clinics were provided in 2014. The health department assisted over 400 doses of high-dose flu vaccine, which is appropriate and needed for those 65 years of older, age of older. Administration of the shingles vaccine is also a very important thing that we do provide. Now, the school-based clinics have been a real success. We've had a strong collaboration with all schools in this town, and over 1,800 vaccinations were given. And the general public clinics are about the same amount of flu vaccinations were provided, but also there's other the types of vaccinations that are provided, including pneumonia, tetanus, Tdap, that is tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis. In other words, whooping cough, and tuberculosis screening. Now, I want to point out, as noted in red on the bottom, there's an upcoming clinic for Tdap that we should be aware of for those who need that type of vaccination. Another important aspect of our activity in relating to youth is our essentially oversight of the Winchester Coalition for a Safer Community. And this is a program which is an outgrowth of what used to be called what would it be called? Anyway, the Substance Abuse Coalition, and this is an outgrowth of that. And it provides programs for parents and students and youth in general for various aspects of struggles that are related to their health. And some of the activities went on during 2014 are listed there. And it's very important to keep this going, and we're able, because now we have funding for a director so that we were able to keep these programs going throughout the year. And it's a very important component of the safety of the youth in Winchester. One aspect of the Winchester Coalition for Safety Community is the recent establishment of essentially a hot tip line, which folks can anonymously provide a tip to the Winchester Police regarding risky behavior and issues that are important. And there's the number there, in case you want to memorize it. Coming up now, very soon, May 2nd, is our next hazardous waste collection day. And also on the same day, we'll be collecting medications, prescription drugs. Hazardous waste collection will be taking place at the DPW yard, and the medication, prescription drugs will be taking place in the parking lot near the Sons of Italy in the transfer station.
Mr. Heinhold, your time has expired. Would you like more time?
2 minutes, please.
It's moved and seconded the speaker's time be extended for 2 minutes. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is granted. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I wanted to point out that we do have now a Sharps collection kiosk that's at the police station that recently got installed, and there's a picture of it. And that's important to keep Sharps essentially out of the environment. So finally, this is a slide just indicate, please reach out to us in terms of the health department and the Winchester Coalition for a Safer Community. It's important that we have public participation in these, for these issues, and we understand what the needs of the community are and how best to serve you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Heinhold. To administrative groups within the town meeting, the Committee on Government Regulations, Mr. Conti. Thank you very much. The committee's report, which addresses Article 2, was in a handout which was presented to you this evening on the table out front. The Committee on Rules, led by Chris Russo, I'm informed, does not have a report this evening. That concludes the reports under Article 1. It's moved and seconded that the reports be received and accepted by the town meeting. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes. We will now adjourn this meeting, and the precinct members will kindly leave the auditorium, go to the right, and enter the gymnasium for precinct meetings. We will reconvene at 8:45, we will reconvene for the purposes of commencing the special town meeting. So it's moved and seconded that this meeting stand in adjournment until the conclusion of the special town meeting, which will start at 8:45. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes. 8:45, thank you.
Test, test. One test. Mike.
Walk around a bit.
I'm going to recommend that we let everybody, let me out on the website, and then Thursday, Phil, the two that resigned today, precincts 1 and 2, and Amber notified so they can fill who's here, but 5 just came in today, and 8 will have it.
Frank, are we ready? Live. All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our coverage, WinCam's live coverage of the first session of Winchester's Springtown meeting. My name is Alan Iden. Welcome. Let's talk about what we have heard so far as the town heard the reports of various departments. Began the town meeting at 7:40 this evening with the Girl Scouts presenting an honor guard and the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. The moderator gave thanks for our performance during a tough winter and noted the passing of two prominent and very well missed people. Mr. Who is a teacher at McCall Middle School, and Sarah Steiger, who spent many years serving school committee. Town paid tribute to both of those, the passing of both of those citizens. Then we got right into the reports. Article 1 was the reports. We started out with the report from Jim Johnson, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and he commented on Jennifer Wilson and Forrest Fontana, who left the board in March, and on Michael Betancourt and Jim Whitehead, who are the new members of the Board of Selectmen as of March. He talked about ongoing flood mitigation projects, the Winchester High School construction, the Wright Lock Farm issue, parking in the center of town. In mitigation, he said the Mystic Valley Parkway widening and the Central Falls projects have both been completed. Swanton Street Bridge and Morocco land still. And he also said the Wright Lock Farm proposals will be ready for a special town, for the regular town meeting, but a session that'll has been delayed until May 28th. And I'll talk about some session schedule shortly. Cindy Boney from the school committee said that the Winchester schools were a dynamic and pivotal in a dynamic and pivotal time. And she said the increasing stress can take its tolls on both the teachers, staff, and students. She commented that the new superintendent is coming in. 4,500 students are in the school system right now, and their achievements are high. She paid tribute to Bill McCullough, the outgoing, retiring superintendent, who will be leaving in about a month or so at the end of the school year. He said he had served for 1,480 days. Had seen 2,100 students graduate from Winchester High School. 36 snow days, a lot of them this past winter, had attended 800 evening and training meetings. He'd overseen $1 million in school projects. Superintendent, who was present here tonight at town meeting. We heard from the Finance Committee, talking about the Finance Committee's adhering to the operating principles of the Board of Selectmen, which wants to keep reserves of 6 to 10% of revenue, and the budget for FY16 would start at level funding. Said the town has seen about $393,000 in health insurance savings by different contributions and by shopping around for insurance. He says the conversion to gas in many gas heat in many municipal buildings has saved money, as have the LED street lamps that have been installed throughout the town. He also said a new solid waste agreement for the town is going to save the town money. However, on the darker side, the state to the town at this point $1,000. He did say the capital and building stabilization funds are fully funded. Keep its borrowing costs low. Liability of the town ends at about $25 million, and that's up about almost 59% since 2000. And that the town will need some overrides for some of the projects, upcoming projects. Planning Board Chair Betsy Kreger talked about course, the of the Center Business District. This zoning is intended to increase business opportunities, but yet maintain the character of Winchester's downtown village. Library trustees, Chairman John French, said that the library is a key part of what makes Winchester desirable. They have added hours for Saturday hours in the summer, and have added an hour to the children's library during weekdays. He said the town's residents of town can download videos, and there's a new scanner installed at the library. He also said that all the Winchester stars from 1901 through 1951 have been scanned and are available online to anybody who logs in. Town Manager Richard Howard reiterated many of the comments that have been made, talking about the FY16 budget, he said, is narrowly balanced. And last report was from the Board of Health, from Chairman David Heinold, who said the Board of Health's mission is to ensure safety, to have prevention efforts. He talked about free testing and disposal of medications. 524 pounds of medications were safely disposed of. Talked about vaccination clinics, and did remind the residents that this coming Saturday on May 2nd from 9 to 1 there will be a hazardous waste collection at the transfer station. So what has happened now is town meeting has adjourned, and will reconvene after the precinct meetings for a special town meeting to consider four important articles of appropriations, three of which are revolving around the Skillings Field area and flood mitigation. Kind of a stretched out schedule for town meeting this time. There'll be a meeting tonight, there'll be a meeting on Thursday night, a meeting on next Monday, and then town meeting will not meet again until the 14th of May, and then to the 28th of May to consider the Wright Log Farm proposals. So again, town meeting is in recess at the moment, and we'll resume as will our coverage, and I'll be back with a wrap-up of tonight's session at the conclusion. Thanks for joining us. Margot said I had no sound all through my...
We'll have separate debate on Article 3. So that brings us to Article 1 of the special town meeting. It is moved and seconded that the amount of $7,450,000 is appropriated for the Aberjona River Flood Mitigation Project 6, consisting of the design, permitting, and construction of a supplemental culvert and surface floodway at Skilling's athletic fields, including all costs incidental and related thereto, that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, is authorized to borrow $7,450,000 under Chapter 44 of the General Laws, or any other enabling authority, that the town manager is authorized to have oversight of said project, and that in accordance with Section 4-2 of the Winchester Home Rule Charter, the town manager shall have the authority to enter into contracts and approve payments with respect to said project, provided, however, that this vote shall not take effect until the town votes to exempt from the limitation on total taxes imposed by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C, Proposition 2.5, amounts required to pay the principal of and interest on the borrowing authorized by this vote. This is a motion brought by the Board of Selectmen, and the initial presenter on behalf of the board will be its chairman, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson.
Good evening once again. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, thank you for attending tonight's special town meeting. We feel it's a crucial, important issue that we deal with tonight, and we ask that you support this Articles 1 through 4. Mr. Moderator, there is a minor housekeeping amendment on Article 3. When would you like to address that?
At the conclusions of Article 1 and Article 2, the amendment, so that the meeting is aware of it, will be to limit the requests being made by the proponents to synthetic turf. At the moment it says or grass fields. We'll simply delete the words or grass fields. We'll articulate that at the time we make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Tonight, for Article 1 and Article 2, we're asking your support to address the two issues in the Skilling's field. One is the installation the fourth culvert, a much talked about issue that that this town meeting had dealt with at previous town meetings. The second one is to address some environmental remediation as requested by the Massachusetts DEP. The Board of Selectmen feel are very critical and would like to get them done. The only way we can do it is, we cannot do it within the present budget, so we are asking an override. We will be asking an override from the citizens of Winchester, and we're asking your support to pass it tonight, so in order to allow us to bond the project. The flood mitigation project, as you all know, a very long, encompassing project. It's been over 20 years for this community. We are making a lot of progress, thanks to a lot of people, but primarily town meeting for supporting us. Flood mitigation project will remove the Winchester High School eventually from the 100-foot floodplain. It will reduce flooding in downtown Winchester and in most neighborhoods that are presently flooded. It will reduce the economic losses to our businesses, to our residents, and to our town and to our school system. It will, present time, we have 273 buildings that are in the 100-year floodplain. That means they need flood insurance. Once this project is completed, approximately 145 of them will be removed. There will be a substantial economic benefit for those people that have houses that require flood insurance. The background: by coordinating these projects, we can save $450,000. We're coordinating with the Winchester High School project, the final phase 3. It is the building project. We are having a remediation project at the same time, which will always save us money because we will not have a duplication of efforts. We hope to have this project ready to be bid by October 2015. We'll require a town meeting and Winchester High School project to work together and have a completion date on or about September 2017. There's also an additional cost savings if we go forward with a synthetic turf field, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. As you can see, or may not see, there are two maps on the board. The first one is a gray line with a small blue line. That is the culvert. The blue line is proposed new culvert. The gray line is existing culverts. That's approximately 1,200 plus feet for the culvert. The line X'd out in yellow is the area that needs to be remediated, has some soil contamination. The plan is to excavate it, test it, cap it, remove some of the soil, and hopefully we will be able to reuse some of the soil there. This project is based upon removal of all the soil completely. We feel pretty confident that there will be a substantial savings if we can remediate the soil on site and reuse it. Again, this is Article 3. We'll go back to when we, after the discussion. Now, this is the funding request. It's for $7,450,000 for the installation of the culvert, $4 million for the installation and work on the remediation and the environmental remediation. I will note that the Article 3, we'll talk about later. Article 4 is $120,000 for design. There's a typo that says 140, but please note it is only 120. Tonight, for Articles 1 and 2 and 3, we have our professional staff here to make a presentation, address technical questions. Article 1, Jake Sanantone, Director of Water Resources from VHF. You've seen him here before. He's well knowledgeable. He's been working with the town for years. Article 2, the Environmental Cleanup and CAP project, will be done by VHF LSP, Michael McKinley. Mr. Moderator, at this time, I'd like to turn Article 1 over to Jake Sanantone for further discussion and explanation.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. San Antonio.
Hi, I'm going to talk about Article 1. I'm going to start with a little bit of background on the town's flood mitigation program and flooding in the town. Winchester was formerly known as Waterfield, a fitting name given the town's problems with flooding. In the past 20 years, the town has experienced a string of significant flood events along the Aberjona River, most recently having 2 flood events in March of 2010. The leading cause of increased runoff and flooding within the community is due to development in the watershed, ultimately the increase of impervious surfaces. Additionally, we've been in a cycle where we have been experiencing more intense rain storms. Estimated damages are over $25 million since 1996. As Jim said, there are approximately 273 properties in the mapped 100-year floodplain and 420 federal insurance policies in force. Many of these policies are not at actuarial rates. They are at lower rates that have been grandfathered, which FEMA is planning to phase out over the coming years. Winchester lies within the middle of the Mystic River watershed. Approximately 26 square miles drain through the town center. As the storm runoff during rain events travels through the rivers and stormwater systems, it gets trapped behind undersized bridges, culverts, and dams. And these create bottlenecks that contribute to the flooding issues. In order to alleviate flooding in the town commissioned a flood study back in 1999 that recommended 17 in-town flood improvement projects. Through an arduous MEPA process that wrapped up in 2010, a final flood mitigation program of 8 in-town projects and 3 out-of-town mitigation projects remained. Several projects have been completed. Others are funded and underway. The one we're here to talk about tonight and others are still planned for the future. It is important to note that all projects that make up the flood mitigation program need to be completed to realize the full benefit of the flood mitigation program. Here's another view of the flood mitigation projects. The projects in blue have already been completed, and the projects in green are the projects that are remaining. As previously said, Project 4 is in the design and permitting process currently and is slated to be constructed this fall. And Project 6, the Skillings Field culvert, is what we're here to talk about tonight. The flood mitigation program, when completed, will remove approximately 50% of the buildings that are currently within the 100-year floodplain. These are highlighted by the properties shown in red. Those would be all the buildings removed from the 100-year floodplain following completion of the flood mitigation program. And the properties that remain in the floodplain will see lower flood elevations and shorter flood durations during flood events. This slide shows a zoom in on the Skillings Field area and shows the reductions in the floodplain following completion of the flood mitigation program. Another slide showing that same area, but for the 10-year floodplain. And you can see that the neighborhoods above the upstream of the culverts will no longer be flooded during a 10-year event. They'll actually see benefits till over the 25-year event. So a little detail on Project 6 that we're here to talk about. There's currently 3 7-foot diameter culverts that run under Skillings Field. This project is to supplement those 3 existing culverts with a 7x15 box culvert and to restore a surface floodway that was included in the original design in the late 60s, but over the years has been essentially deteriorated with top dressing of the field. So it will be to restore that. During the design process and permitting, several options were reviewed, including full daylighting, partial daylighting, and leaving the existing culverts and supplementing it with an open channel. The site has many design constraints that has driven the design. As many may know, or some may not, the site was the former Aberjona Pond. It was a large pond that has been filled over time. There's a layer of 10 to 15 feet of fill over a 20 to 30 foot layer of peat, which seriously increases the cost of the project because the culverts can't just sit on the existing ground. They have to be pile supported so to prevent differential settlement. There's also MWRA sewer that runs along the western side of the field that limits the location where the proposed culvert can go. The project as designed requires federal, state, and local permits. We have had preliminary discussions with the permitting agencies and anticipate filing the permits this spring. The culvert is estimated to cost $7,450,000. The preliminary design has been completed, and as I just said, permitting is expected for this spring, with final design this summer and bidding hopefully in October. This will allow the project to dovetail with phase 3 of the high school project and be completed at the completion of that phase. Project 6 is one of the town's flood mitigation projects. The program as a whole reduces flood impacts along the Aberjona River. The project is a critical component of the flood mitigation program and allows the future projects to take place. As I previously said, the program will ultimately remove approximately 50% of the buildings currently within the mapped 100-year floodplain from the floodplain when completed. That I'm complete.
Thank you, Mr. San Antonio. I understand now that with respect to the environmental remediation, the Board of Selectmen's expert, Paul McKinley, will address the town meeting.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul McKinley. I'm an environmental consultant with Van Ness, Hagen, Brusselen, and Watertown, Mass. And I've been working with the town to assess the soil contamination issues out in Skilling's Field and try and design and come up with a mitigation or remedial strategy that we're going to talk about here tonight. So first off, where did the contamination come from? As Jake just alluded to, the Skilling's Field wasn't always a field. It was a pond. Aberjona Pond that was filled with some material, and it turns out that material was actually impacted and not the best to be filling it with, but here's a couple iterations of some aerial photographs of the field. Into its present configuration, of course, it was filled beginning in the early 1900s and through opening of the field in 1972. What was it filled with? Well, it was filled with some tannery waste from Beggs and Cobb Tannery, some municipal disposal of waste, trash, municipal incinerator ashes. This is what we think is actually a large component of the contamination that we see. And then, of course, the site was in 1968 through 72 was, when it opened, was developed as a athletic field. So what have we been doing to assess this contamination? Beginning in September 2013 is when we initially identified the contamination. It was during pre-characterizations of soils for Project 6, which Jake just talked about. As soon as we found out there was contamination, we called DEP immediately and underwent a superficial sampling program. The intent of this was to make sure that nobody was being harmed by using the field. What we term that as an imminent hazard. Turns out that the superficial material was actually remarkably clean, and that's the material that Mr. Johnson was talking about we hope to be able to reuse in our CAP, which is the proposed mitigation plan. Mass DEP assigned a release tracking number to this, and we've actually had multiple meetings with DEP and talked about this process with them throughout. In February and March, we actually did a geophysical survey, it's an EM31 electromagnetic survey. We actually got basically a 3D picture of the field, and it helped us target the sampling. So not only did a grid pattern across the top of the field, but we also targeted areas where we thought the contamination was the most intensive. We've been expediting these assessments, all to gather this information so we know what kind of mitigation plan would be acceptable to DEP, and we can incorporate that and dovetail it into these additional projects that we've been talking about. So the contamination is mostly metals. Again, we think it's from the municipal ash that was put into the field. And again, just to reiterate, there's no imminent hazard. It's limited to soil impacts at this time. Great news is it's not impacting the groundwater out there, which is fantastic news. It could make the cleanup much more complicated. And based on the sampling, we've done grid patterns and targeted sampling. The western half of the field, this yellow hatched area, is the area that needs to be capped. It requires a barrier that I'll get into in just a second here. But with that cap, it will prevent exposure to the contamination underneath, and this is required by the regulations which govern the assessment and mitigation of contamination. It's called the Massachusetts Contingency Plan. And so if properly capped, it will reduce the risk of receptors, that's people using the field, coming in contact with this material. So what's the plan to mitigate? It is a 2-foot cap over approximately 7.2 acres, 23,000 cubic yards of contaminated soil. Will be excavated and removed, and hopefully we can reuse a large portion of that. The material that's been top dressed, that superficial material has been top dressed over the years, and again, appears to be clean and suitable for reuse. So the cap, it's a 6-inch topsoil cap with 18 inches of fill underneath, 2 feet, with a pretty beefy barrier, a geotextile barrier underneath. This is DEP's requirement. It's got a high tensile strength, and really will be very difficult to penetrate with manual means. That way it'll limit any exposure in case somebody does get out there and dig in the field. It should prevent them from actually getting into the contaminated material underneath. The cap will be utilized with what's called an activity and use limitation. It'll warn people that this contamination is there, and hopefully prevent any excavation through this barrier. In some areas, as part of the high school, they're actually proposing to increase the parking areas out on the site, and so that pavement will actually act as the cap and the barrier. So again, the cost here is about $4 million. We hope to be able to reuse a lot of the material and drive that cost down. The plan is when stage 3 of the high school goes forward, that we can incorporate this mitigation into the redoing of the ball fields and do it in conjunction with Project 6. So in short, we've been working with DEP to come up with this proposed mitigation plan for your consideration tonight. We think it's the most cost-effective and certainly meets the regulations in consultation with DEP. And we feel that's the best plan moving forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McKinley. That concludes the board's presentation on Articles 1 and 2 of the special town meeting. May we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee? Mr. Melkonian.
The Finance Committee voted favorable action on Article 1. We recognize that the culvert is an integral part of the completion of the town's planned flood mitigation plan. Do you want Article 2 now, too?
Yes, thank you.
We also voted favorable action on Article 2. We recognize the efficiencies to complete this work in conjunction with the high school project.
Thank you very much. So we have 2 articles, the expenditure of some $11,450,000, which will be bonded and subject to an affirmative vote of the town to override the 2.5 limitation. That election tentatively scheduled at the moment for June 9th of this year. Further on the question? Mr. Pitaro. Well, you're the first one. I don't know if you're the only one. You're welcome.
we have a new moderator. Special service. First question I have is, what's the total cost of all? It's a good idea. What is the total cost of all projects? Flood mitigation. Do we have a total?
Mr. Pitaro asked the question, the total cost of flood mitigation projects, and I assume you mean those completed and scheduled that were on the slide that we saw?
Right. What we've done, what we still have to do.
Is there somebody from the Board of Selectmen who can speak to that? Mr.
I believe the original estimate was about $20 million when we went through with the MEPA project.
It looks, well, maybe Jake, I don't know, I'm getting like 30 or 40 million, but anyway. So let's say it's somewhere between 20 and 30. I think that project 6 was ending up about 7. This is 8, assuming the remediation is something that, assigning no cost here. Anyway, what percentage of the 25 million of damage over the last 20 years will be avoided by this?
So the question Mr. Pitaro asked to the Board of Selectmen is what percentage of the future flooding costs will be avoided by the projects being proposed under Article 1? Mr. Johnson.
We really don't know what the future percentage of costs will be because we have no way of looking into the future. I'm sure wish we all could. However, we do believe that this will address a 25-year storm or less, and it would have a less of effect on the community, even in heavier storms.
That's a fair answer. My last informational question before I get to my discussion is, in the analysis of this project, the existing culverts are left in place. Can anyone address what the useful life of those culverts has been assumed to be and what it will cost to replace them, and whether that will occur within the timetable of the field life?
Mr. Pitaro asked Mr. San Antonio if he could address if the existing culverts were left in place, what their useful life would be going forward. Mr. San Antonio.
Sure. The culverts are, existing culverts are precast concrete culverts. They were installed in 69-70. Precast concrete typically has a design life of about 100 years, but will last longer. So the design life is 100 years. So you're looking at 2070.
So that's the current design life. I've read where the median design life is 75.
Mr. Pitaro, let's try and confine ourselves to inquiry or argument and not
okay,
debate.
fair enough.
Thank you.
So, first question I have is the cost-benefit analysis here, which I've wondered about for a long time. Let's use the conservative numbers, $20 million at least invested. I think it's more than that. We're saving $1 million a year. It's a 5% return on investment. Now, there's public safety reasons. There's a lot of reasons why we ought to want to do this, but let's understand what the benefit is if we saved it all. If we didn't save all of that $25 million over 20 years, the rate of return on this investment is perhaps 2 or 3%. And there's some other questions. Let's just stipulate that the existing culverts will last a while, but they will have to be replaced. I've come to this project starting in the early part of the last decade, asking whether there was another objective or objectives to consider in this project. Let me just say that the executive branch and the various town managers and various boards of selectmen, we've got 15 or 17 of them so far involved in the project, have done an excellent job on the narrow-focused flood mitigation. I now come here with more experience, 8 years on the planning board, and have 3 years of which have been doing the town center initiative, looking at the ways of trying to integrate the high school campus with the town center campus, and considering some broader design issues. And I think I wonder whether the blinders on the project objective are appropriate. So let me just talk about the way this project started. When it was started, there's something called the design storm. You can't model everything. So the design storm was picked conservatively high compared to what the numbers were at the time. It's picked to be 8.5 inches. I think that's over a 24-hour period, and it assumes some sort of percolation based upon average weather. Okay.
Mr. Bitar, your initial time has expired. Would you like more time?
I'd like an additional 7 minutes.
We can move to extend your time for 5 minutes. Moved and seconded that speaker's time be expended for 5 minutes. All those in favor? Any opposed? Please proceed. The motion passes.
Okay. 5 minutes will do. The initial considerations were flood mitigation, the consideration of the initial design storm at 8.5 inches, the MWA interceptor, which is the sewer line that's on the west side, as a constraint, accepted as a constraint, which is fine as an initial point. The old culvert's accepted. There's some question about that. As time went on, what has happened since 1998? Well, we had a Clinton in the White House. I guess that could happen again, but that's beside the point. The planning board got a planner, restarted the master plan, looked at the town center initiative, and started looking at these broader topics. We had a high school project added. We have had a bikeway project considered for this. There's considerations of the pool being located there. We've got the whole concept of the town center, design, recreation, habitat, fish. We've got parking for high school students. We've got this contamination issue. And we've got the fact that it's not going to solve the whole problem, that a whole watershed approach is going to be necessary for this. Now, the point of my graphic is to show you what we're facing now that wasn't in the full view of the project designers in 1998. If we were starting this today, the planning board would be starting a mini master plan for Skilling's Field, just like it did for Town Center. It's about the same size, right? Critical piece of property. And here's the ultimate point. Cost estimates seem to drive a lot of people's thinking. And I'm just going to say cost for what? It's my belief that the costs have been a little bit underestimated all along the way. That aside, we can quibble about that. If you look to maximize on one objective, you will do that. If you look, you can't look to maximize on every objective, but if you look to the daylighting, full daylighting alternative, I use that as an example, which means make the open channel, get us out of what I call the culvert business, so those culverts never have to be replaced again. And we don't have to worry about when it is, whether it's 50 years or 30 years. We don't have to worry about the Army Corps of Engineers. We don't have to worry about this, that, and the other thing. We don't have to worry about the fact that they're not going to handle the flood, the extra rainfall that's coming down. And then we think about the other things we can do with the field. We would end up, in my view, with similar, I say similar, I can't prove it because I don't have $200,000 to design a new project, similar costs and a much better amenity for the town. And I think there's time to accomplish all the objectives people are worried about, the 2019 remediation, the fields, the coordination with the high school, do all these objectives if you wanted to do it. I point out a couple of things on this slide which are too small to read. One is the availability of up to $4 million from a natural resource damage fund by the end of 2016 for restoration of habitat. Not a certainty, but not an impossibility. I have talked with the person who will run that, and they have to run a process, but there is a possibility of that. That is what I call other people's money that would mitigate against cost, say, daylighting. The other is, I think if the town goes about negotiating with the MWRA, there is some remaining useful life of that sewer pipe. Is it 50%? Is it 25%? We don't know. But I do know from my talks with the MWRA that they will undertake an analysis of moving that pipe if the town wants it. Now, who is the town? They can't have 20 people saying they're the town. But right now, the representation has been from the flood mitigation point of view. It has not been, in my mind, an aggressive attempt to try to have the MWRA relocate that sewer. And I don't, so all in all, I think there's time to do something better at a similar price. And I just think this is something that I'm going to recommend that you vote down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bottaro. Further on the question? Mr. Johnson. Precinct 5, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, Bob Johnson, Precinct 5. I want to ask the question that Drew Bottaro asked about future damage. Let me ask it you can't predict the future, okay, so let's ask it in the past. Since 1996, we experienced $30 million worth of damage. Now, you talked about the culvert being proposed would mitigate a 10-year storm or maybe a 20-year storm up to a 25-year storm. Is it possible to estimate, going on past history, what percentage of that 30 million damage would not have been eliminated if we'd had that culvert?
Mr. Johnson asked the question, what percentage of the $30 million in property damage that the town has estimated that it's been incurred would have been eliminated if the proposed project we're now considering was in place? Someone want to address that from the board? Mr. San Antonio? Sure. So the board's consultant from VHB, Mr. San Antonio.
That's a tough thing to put a number to. Looking at the flood mitigation program as a whole, I don't think you can separate it out just Project 6, because a lot of the damages are in the downtown area, which are already seeing benefits from the completion of Project 2 and Project 3, the Center Falls Dam project. It'd be really hard to put a percentage to. You know, we haven't had a 100-year storm. We've had a bunch of 50-year storms and smaller. So in a lot of those storms, the town would have seen no damages. So it's tough to put a number to, but in a lot of those storms, there would have been no damages.
Follow-up?
Yes, Mr. Johnson, with a follow-up.
Maybe in a simpler way, you showed us the storms that went through that period from 96 to the future. How many of those, does anybody have a guess even? How many of those would have been within the 20-year flood period, range, excuse me? Same question, a different way, I guess.
I think the slide that Mr. San Antonio, I think, had up had a detail of the storm measurement there that made reference to years.
Those are the storms that we've had since 1996 that are, significant events. With the storm of 2001, the March storm there being the largest.
Mr. San Antonio, for the benefit of the meeting and purposes of clarity, when you use the terminology 25-year flood or 10-year flood, that defines what? That's a flood event that would take place every 25 years? Is that what that refers to?
That's the terminology, but it's actually, it's the 25-year flood is the 4% annual chance event, so there's a 4% chance of that event happening in any current year, commonly referred to as a 25-year flood. So the 100-year flood would be the 1% annual chance of reoccurrence.
It's kind of related to the size of the flood, too, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, looking at that, then, I guess it'd be my guess that, well, let's see, there's only one of them that's, well, they're all over the 20-year flood range. Yeah. I'm confused. I'm trying to quantify.
Well, when I said the residents just upstream of the culvert wouldn't see flooding in storms less than a 25-year event, but overall, there's benefits for every storm in town based on the flood mitigation program.
I agree. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Further on the question? Yes, Mr. Wilson.
Looked after each of these floods, And I remember that the Skillings Road was flooded after that bridge was completed. It appeared to me that water was running over it, that it was holding back water.
Sure. I think, don't hold me to the, I think it was around 2002 the Shore Road culvert was completed, and those projects were done with a waiver allowing them to be done out of order, essentially because those projects didn't have as, without completing projects downstream, there was a bigger bottleneck downstream, so those projects could be put in place earlier because they didn't cause downstream impacts, but without the completion of, say, Project 2, the river widening, Project 3, Center Falls, and Project 4, Mount Vernon Street, you're not realizing the benefit of the bigger culvert at Shore Road.
Yes, follow-up, Mr. Wilson.
I do know, I'm not an engineer, but I do know that water runs downhill. So my observation was that there was water running across the top of the Shore Road Bridge. So it appeared to me anyhow that the Shore Road Bridge, the new Shore Road Bridge, was holding back water. And so it's to the point here of what we get with this protection given the floods that we're having.
You know, Roger, you're 100% right, but let's go back 20 years ago. We had a lot of downstream issues that we have taken care of. One of the biggest problems we had downstream was at the Mid Lakes Dam. If you remember that in the first flood, there was even talk about blowing that dam up. So what we've tried to do is address issues at a time. If I'm not mistaken, when you're talking about the Skillings culvert, we also did the Cross Street culvert. That was when Senator Shannon had got us money very quickly, and that was, I believe, even before we really started a full flood mitigation program. What we've done different today is all the downstream improvements. Yes, we've done the downstream mid-locks dams, and if you haven't seen it, take a look at it. It's a fantastic project. I can remember several times going around with Jake and other members, and even members from the state, looking at that dam in a flood, driving around the town. And the consensus was that dam had to be replaced. That's why when we had the NEPA decision, it was a comprehensive decision throughout the whole watershed. And it addressed not just Winchester, but sources outside of Winchester. That's why we said earlier in my statement, we're going forward with this project because the state in their wisdom decided that the Craddock Locks down on Main Street in Medford needs some work and is holding back water. So we're able to go forward because the state is stepping forward in two ways. First of all, by doing the Craddock Locks. Second of all, we got $2.5 million this year to address the Hon Pond Dam, the Scully Dam, to make that bigger and sluice gates. That came out of state money. But yes, this is a comprehensive program, and any one issue that you take in your mind, you have to look at the whole thing to see if it's going to happen. We have 2 sluice gates now that are working very well. We only had 1 originally. We can get the water out of town faster, so that would stop the water at Skillings Road backing up. So if you just think about the whole comprehensive program, it puts in a little bit better perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the question, sir, right here. Jake.
Hi, John Kilborn, Precinct 3. I support this flood mitigation effort, but one of the things that I believe looking into this is that all the alternatives should be fully explored. There's an architect in town, David Anderson, who's looked at the daylighting alternative, and he has a plan that has the, in addition to instead of the new culvert, the existing culverts would remain, and we would have a daylighted Abergona on the side of the fields, which would allow us to keep the playing fields, but have a daylighted river, which I believe presents a lot of important benefits in terms of habitat and other values, aesthetics values. Now, I know that the daylighting was looked into at the original environmental impact statement, but I think it needs a much closer scrutiny. There's a potential to get money from Massachusetts. There's a natural impact. There's potential money from the state. In addition, we have to look also at the MWRA, whether they have money. And I think those alternatives have not been fully explored. There is an override vote coming up, and I would urge the Board of Selectmen to take a closer look at that, to try to look at the design. And I think if we look at the design closely, the cost between this additional culvert and the daylighting may be the same. And so for the same amount of money, we can really have a benefit to the town. Instead of hiding the river in a culvert, we can have it exposed. We can have a walkway, which will be an asset instead of something sunk into the middle of the field. So I would urge the Board of Selectmen to, if this vote passes, I would urge them to take a look at that and explore that prior to the override vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson, would you like to address the daylighting issue?
Yes, I think if you go back to the record, the Board of Selectmen has done a very good job investigating the options of daylighting. As you remember, a couple years ago, it came to the town meeting. There was a proposal to look at daylighting. A town meeting decided not to go with the daylighting option. There are several issues with the daylighting, not to mention the MDC culvert, a safety issue, the depth of the daylighted river, or whatever you want to call it, waterway. It's a public safety issue. It has to be so deep, it has to be V'd down to allow the water. Can't have a quick drop-off. But lately, forget about the MWRA sewer, that's a lot of money. But lately, now with the flood mitigation and now the environmental issue, it'd be cost prohibitive to really do a river or open culvert because of the water effect on the soil. And the environmental LSP could address what would have to be done if we did do daylighting. If you'd like him to do it, he could explain to you briefly. Thank you.
Just for the benefit of the meeting and those who may not be familiar with the nomenclature, daylighting refers to the concept of excavating the land and exposing the river, which now runs in a concrete box culvert underneath the field. In the daylighting concept, the river, some portion of it, or some pond or pool of it would be exposed so that you'd have a open body of water running through the field. This is a field which is used at the moment, and it's contemplated will be used in the future in connection with the public school program. And in that regard, I don't know if the school committee has taken a position with respect to the work on the field. Let's hear from the school committee in the first instance, and then we'll address your point of information.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Susan Verdicchio. I'm from Precinct 1. I'm the member of the school committee. The school committee voted unanimously to support the coordinated, comprehensive projects on Skilling's Field embodied in the warrant articles. We think it makes a lot of sense to move forward with the multi-phase flood mitigation program that's been planned and designed for a decade. There's a lot of engineering behind it. We definitely think it makes sense to move forward and do the culvert and the environmental mitigation before we put in the parking area and the field upgrade. There's a shortage of field space in Winchester, and we think it's a good idea to upgrade that baseball field and turn it into a combination of baseball and multi-sport field. We think this is the most comprehensive and cost-effective way to move forward. You know, we've been trying to follow this, and we appreciate all the investigation and work that the Board of Selectmen and their consultants have put into this. So that's our position.
Thank you, Ms. Verdicchio. Mr. Bottaro, you had a point of information. Well, we'll give you one. Sure, go ahead.
A and B, part A and B.
There you go.
Now, I may have misunderstood some of the public hearings, but I thought two statements were made. One, that the daylighting was superior from a flood mitigation point of view. The second is that the project 2 is a choke point, that we cannot get the water out of Winchester as fast as possible because of design limitations of point 2, which is project 2. Could that be clarified?
Certainly. Could someone from the board address the issue of whether daylighting the current at the moment would improve the flood mitigation qualities as opposed to the project being proposed? Mr. San Antonio.
Sure. As far as flood mitigation, Project 6 with the culverts and the surface floodway would be an equivalent capacity as a daylighted channel. As far as Project 2, yes, the Corps was originally proposing a 42-foot bottom width for that channel, but due to good design constraints, we had to drop it down to a 35-foot width channel. But the channel is still sized to pass a 100-year storm. Originally, we were looking at a larger storm of a 500-year for that section of channel.
Thank you. Further question, Mr. Jarius.
Diabjarius, Precinct 8. A point of clarification, the design considerations on Project 2 were because the town didn't like the looks of a really wide channel, I believe, and so we did take aesthetics and other points of view into how we were going to deal with that. Since the daylighting seems to be equivalent in terms of flood mitigation, and since there seems to be a very robust program for capping the field with this thick orange safety layer plus another barrier below it, why is it that we can't do the same thing below the daylighted channel so that we would have the benefits of the open channel and we would have the benefits of keeping the contaminated soil out of the waterways?
Mr. San Antonio, the expert retained by the Board of Selectmen from VHB, addressing Mr. Jarius's inquiry.
Sure, we did look at daylighting options. Daylighting, given that it's through the more contaminated section of the field, there would be additional soil disposal through that contaminated area. You know, the preliminary costs we were estimating for the daylighting were in the $14 million range, almost double the culvert range, and due to the costs, as one reason, further investigation wasn't completed.
Thank you. Yes, sir. And then we'll move towards consideration.
Mike Galvin, Precinct 2. I support the projects, but my question more is related to the timing. And it seems that this is really a question for the fellow from VHB on the soil remediation project. If there was any strategy, it seems the timing, the mandate of DEP in 2019 kind of drives a lot of this. Is there any strategy you could use with DEP to delay beyond that?
Mr. McKinley from VHB addressing Mr. Galvin's question.
Sure. So the regulations are they're the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, and from notification, which was November 1st, 2013, you basically have a 6-year window to get to what we term as a regulatory endpoint. So they look at either a permanent or a temporary solution. So again, the timeframes we're looking at here, you get some cost savings if we dovetail with these other projects. One of the reasons that we expedited our assessment and really gathered the data to come up with the mitigation plan that we have. But eventually you're going to have to address this hazard that you have out here, the contamination, under the regulations. And again, so the timing is advantageous if we can dovetail it with the other projects, but eventually DEP is going to look at the town of Winchester as a responsible party for this contamination to mitigate it in accordance with the regulations.
Thank you. This is going to be a 2/3 vote requiring the appointment of tellers. So I would ask if the following town meeting members would agree to serve as tellers: Ms. Boney, Mr. Hart, Ms. Schwartz, and Mr. Canavan. If you could all rise and agree that you will solemnly perform your duties as tellers and provide us with an honest and accurate count. With respect to this section here, if Ms. Latz, Ms. Grensback, and Mr. Jarius in the red T-shirt will all be on Ms. Schwartz's side of the count. You can stay where you are. Do you have and everybody to the left of them will be on Mr. Hart's side of the count. Mr. Conti had one comment. I recognized Mr. Conti. Certainly. Mr. Conti asked the Finance Committee, Mr. Malconian, what the financial impact of these two projects would be. I think
The Board of Selectmen had asked the assessor to do that today. The culvert and the remediation, it's approximately $100. It's $64.39 for the culvert and $34.58 for the remediation. This is based upon a 25-year amortization, and so it's approximately it's $100.
So I think there's a little bit of confusion, Mr. Johnson, between those of us who are thinking we come...
Based upon the average assessed house of $872,000.
So the tax impact on a average house, hard to believe, an average house, $872,000 would be $100 on your tax bill on an annual basis. Is that correct? Yes. Thank you. Mr. Melconian, that sound correct to you? Or? Thank you very much. Okay, here we go on the question on Article 1, the motion as previously read, moved and seconded that the $7,450,000 be appropriated on the terms and conditions of the motion as previous read. All those in favor, please rise. If you could count FinCom, thank you. And Mr. Canavan, if you could count the Board of Selectmen, as well as everybody else over there. So, Susan, you have everybody to the left. Michael Canavan has everybody to the right. 28. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All those opposed could please rise. And 57 people having voted, 105 votes required for passage, 132 in favor. Motion number 1 passes. Article 1 is passed. We'll proceed to Article 2. Article 2, the motion as previously read, that it is moved and seconded that the amount of $4 million is appropriated for the design, permanent construction of the environmental remediation of Skillings Field. Motion otherwise as previously read to the town meeting. All those in favor of motion number 1 under Article 2, please rise. So, yeah, I'm sorry, Article 2. This is the motion under Article 2. All those opposed, please rise. 167 people having cast a vote, 112 required to pass, 146 people having voted affirmatively. The motion passes. That brings us to Article 3. Article 3, as set forth in your special town meeting motion booklet, the written motion has been amended and now reads as follows, as made by the Board of Selectmen. It is moved and seconded that the amount of $1,650,000 is appropriated for the design, permitting, and construction of synthetic turf, and the words "or grass fields" are now, or grass athletic fields are now stricken from the motion, consisting of a baseball diamond and rectangular multi-purpose field at Skillings Field, including a lighting conduit, original equipment and landscaping, and all other costs incidental and related thereto, that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, is authorized to borrow $1,650,000 under Chapter 44 of the general laws or any other enabling authority, that the town manager is authorized to have oversight of said project, and that in accordance with Section 4-2 of the Winchester Home Rule Charter, the town manager shall have the authority to enter into contracts and approve payments with respect to said project, provided, however, that this vote shall not take effect until the town votes to exempt from the limitation on total taxes imposed by Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C, Proposition 2.5, amounts required to pay the principal of and interest on the borrowing authorized by this vote, and the borrowings authorized by the votes for the Skillings Field supplemental culvert and floodway and environmental remediation projects. This is a motion by the Board of Selectmen to appropriate $1,650,000, subject to bonding, approval of the 2.5 override vote at the special town election on June 9th, and the passage of the override votes as contemplated under Articles 1 and 2. On behalf of the proponents, the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson.
On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, thank you for your previous vote. We're here tonight again for question about the proposed synthetic baseball and multi-purpose field. As you can see in this layout, it incorporates a baseball diamond to be used, and then on the off-season, a multi-purpose green field to be used. This is an additional cost to the override. The reason the Board of Selectmen put the questions forward this way, because there was a want to do the environmental and flood mitigation issue. There was a need to do the environmental and flood mitigation, and we want to put a field in. We do need the first part first. This is an approximate cost of $1.65 million. We ask your support on it. The impact to the tax rate is approximately $14 annually based upon a $872,000 home, or about $9 a month. We will be eliminating in the motion, we'd be asked to amend the motion, removing the word or grass on the second line. So it would read construction of a synthetic turf athletic fields consisting of baseball diamond and rectangular multi-purpose field at Skillings. Is that motion in order now, Mr. Moderator?
Well, I don't think as I read the motion, I deleted the words "or grass athletic fields." I don't think the motion had been previously made. So just so it's understood, the motion being made by the Board of Selectmen is the same as in your book, except it deletes the words "or grass fields." I don't think we need to amend it because the motion had not yet been made. Simply, it's correcting the printed copy with what's being proposed at this time. So it's the synthetic field that's being proposed without a grass option.
We do have a landscape architect from Gale Associates available to explain the field process and answer any questions you have. And I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Peter Stantos now, please.
Mr. Spanos is a landscape architect with Gale Associates, speaking on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
Actually, civil engineer.
Civil engineer.
Awesome. Awesome, thank you. So, my name is, like I said before, Peter Spounce with Gale Associates. I'm a civil engineer, and we were asked to take a look at the options of the opportunities to install a synthetic turf multi-purpose field in the location where the current baseball field is, to dovetail into the previously proposed projects, the culvert and the soil mitigation. So just briefly, was touched before, this is the current aerial of what's out at Skilling's today. You have the old track and field up to the north, and you have the baseball field down to the south. The fields currently support soccer, field hockey, lacrosse. The track isn't, I believe, currently used for main events. So the high school sports and parking projects. So what we have here is the top portion right now that you see is the current high school project. I believe it's phase 2. So this is currently what the improvements will be at the baseball field. It will consist of an expanded new parking lot and a partial reconstruction of the baseball field, little shifting to the north, rebuild it, reseed it. What we were asked to take a look at is the opportunity to install a multi-purpose synthetic turf field. That's the lower portion. It would still be generally within the same footprint, within the same orientation. However, it would be approximately 120,000 square feet. It would incorporate a full baseball field, and in the outfield portion of the baseball field, a multi-purpose rectangular field capable of supporting soccer, lacrosse, field hockey, even football if needed. The portion that you see here, the little hatch that's overlaid on top of it, is the proposed soil remediation portion of it. It basically runs over half of the proposed baseball field. So approximately about 60,000 square feet of the soil capping per se would take advantage with the construction of the synthetic turf field. This is a picture of a similar project that Gale Associates was involved with recently. It's some photos I took there. It's very similar. It's the baseball field with the outfield portion being used for football, soccer, and lacrosse. This is the bottom is what it would look like, and if it was constructed, it would pretty much look like this. So some of the advantages in dovetailing into this project, like I mentioned, would be the synthetic turf portion of it. It's basically a 2 to 2.5 inch carpet, if you will, with an infill inside of it. On top of that is, or below that, is about a foot of free draining stone. And that's the portion, that foot per se of free draining stone is the portion that would take advantage and do double duties as part of the capping efforts within that, I guess, western portion of the field. So the top portion of the cost is currently what was being proposed currently, which is basically the parking lot and the reconstruction of the grass baseball field. The synthetic turf portion, baseball field that we talked about right now would be approximately $1,650,000. That would be coordinated to go concurrently with the culvert drainage improvements and the soil remediation. Projected to be installed toward the tail end of all the projects around the 2017. So the bottom line, the baseball field is going to be reconstructed currently within the same footprint. It would remain grass if being done the way it is. The parking lot would be part of the high school project that's currently underway. The upgrade to the baseball diamond multipurpose field would accommodate multi-sports. It would give the town the opportunity and the school the opportunity to host and have events during inclement weather, during when the fields are, a grass field would be otherwise raining, and lacrosse or football is trying to get on the fields. A synthetic turf field gives you the advantage of being able to be played on without damaging the turf itself. Construction
Mr.
time-
Spanos, the proponent's time has expired. Do you require more time?
No, it's just the last bullet. Just mentioned before, the cost savings would be if happening concurrently with the culvert and the environmental cleanup.
Thank you, Mr. Spanos. May we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee? Mr. Melconian.
The Finance Committee voted unfavorable action on this article. We appreciate the cost savings that could be realized by doing this work in conjunction with the other projects that we've seen tonight. However, we are concerned that the revolving fund for the current synthetic field that was generously donated to the town is not on track to be able to fund replacement of that field. And we have a big concern of bringing another field online without a plan to fund maintenance and future replacement within that fund.
Thank you, Mr. Melconian. Ms. Verdicchio, could we, on Article 3, could we have the school committee recommendation on that, please?
Mr. Moderator, I might have erred in talking about the field before, but the school committee views these projects as an integrated way to improve Skilling's Field and have it ready for use when the high school renovation is complete. So, as I said, we do support this article, and we hope you'll vote for it.
Thank you, Ms. Verdicchio. Mr. Conti, further in the question.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I heard the words used that there is an advantage to a synthetic field, but the only advantage I heard was that we could play soccer or football when it's raining out. Maybe I missed something there, but, and I also heard the Finance Committee caution us on the replacement of this field. Yet I didn't hear anybody explain to us, or our consultant explain to us what the useful life of this field would be. And I wonder why the existing grass field it's served its purposes for many years, and I frankly don't see the necessity of the additional expense of a synthetic field. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Amidst his argument, Mr. Conti makes an inquiry as to the useful life of this field, any plan for the maintenance and upkeep of the field, and if there are demonstrable benefits beyond its availability for foul weather usage. On behalf of the proponents, responding to those particular inquiries, Mr. Johnson.
The estimated life of this baseball multipurpose field is approximately 12 to 15 years. We expect it to last longer than a normal grass field because the usage would be for baseball some of the time, which has less activity in the outfield, and the rest of the season it would be used for multi-green sports. We do believe that it will address several issues. It will improve the quality of Winchester High School sports and Winchester childhood sports, youth sports. We believe it increases the use of the field for the season. And yeah, if you want to go out and play, you can play when it's raining. But we would like your support. We think this is a way to partially address some of our field issues.
Thank you. Further on the question.
Mr. Moderator, I have two questions, if you don't mind. The first one goes to clarification. On the diagram, it laid out the grass fields are part of the WHF's project already, and that the turf field is an additional project that we're voting on now, correct?
Currently, as I understand it, and I'd ask the proponents to correct me, that your assumption is the correct one, which is that the grass field is contemplated within the current scope of the high school project, and that the request that is being made to the town meeting is to appropriate an additional sum which would convert that portion of the field that's been indicated into a synthetic field.
Right. Is that correct?
Mr. Johnson, if you could confirm that.
Yes, that is correct. Phase 3 in the high school project includes pumping out the baseball diamond more towards second place to allow for parking. Phase 3 at the high school project only deals with the baseball field, and it deals with just reseeding the area they're working on.
Okay, the second one is, do we have a full picture of what Skilling's Field would look like? Because at this point in time, I believe there's 3 full multi-fields and the baseball field, and what I'm seeing there is you're literally taking a multi-field and putting it into the outfield and stretching it out into one of the other multi-fields. So will we still have 3 multi-fields and 1 baseball field, or will it be some other configuration?
I don't have a diagram, I'm sorry, I apologize. What it does do, it does maintain the outer fields like you're talking about, but it also has plans to eliminate the track, which makes that green area a larger area. So you will still have the 3 fields, plus you'll get a multi-purpose green field out of it.
Yeah, my only concern would be, I love the idea of the turf, but if we're gonna end up losing multi-fields, then with the shortage of fields in town, I don't know if I could back this.
So the question being is one of the consequences of the synthetic turf request to reduce the number of multi-purpose fields?
No, definitely not.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Further on the question? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kathy Tomey from Precinct 6. I just want to clarify, you said the useful life of this field is 12 to 15 years, but my debt will be 25. So am I still going to be paying for this thing when this is long gone?
The useful life, Mr. Johnson,
The maximum amount of time you can take a turf field out for bonding is 15 years, and that is the average household cost $14 annually. So it's the life expectancy is to at least last the life of this field, maybe a little longer.
so the answer is that the assumption is incorrect, that the bonding contemplated by this request is a 15-year bond, which should be roughly coterminous with the expected useful life of the field. Further on the question, Mrs. Kreger. Betsy, could we just get you to come down to the mic or wait for a gentleman here? Thank you very much.
I actually have 2 questions. One relates to the cost and with respect to the revolving fund and so forth, because by my calculation, if you're talking about a 15-year life, I was told somewhere, and you can confirm for me if this is correct, is that the replacement cost would be the cost of basically replacing the carpet on top. I had heard an estimated cost on that of about $1 million at the end of its useful life. Number one, I need to know if that's correct. And if so, I mean, I'm just wondering if the sports fees are going to have to be increased in order to cover, if on a 15-year life of about $67,000 a year just for one field, or the $83,000 or so required, on a 12-year life.
Thank you, Mr. Kreger. Mr. Johnson, the question is, what approximately will the replacement cost be? Can you confirm the $1 million number? And will increased athletic fees be used to provide a sinking replacement fund for the field?
I would defer the life and cost of the field to our expert, but I will mention that presently we have a revolving account to deal with this, deal with Manchester Field. The intention of the revolving account was to subsidize replacement of the turf field. It was never intended to fully fund replacement of a turf field. One of the things we do with the revolving account with the turf field is use it for repairs and extraordinary maintenance to that field, but it was never intended to fully fund the replacement of the carpet.
Thank you. And Mr. Spanos, do you have a more particular answer to the replacement cost issue?
Yes, so what we're finding with projects, older projects that are having turf being replaced, so you are correct, what they replace is essentially the carpet. The infrastructure, the drainage, the stone, that remains the same, that doesn't change. The carpet itself gets replaced with the infill. So what we're finding is on a publicly bid project, roughly around $4 a square foot, so probably around $400,000, $450,000.
Okay, so a little less. That's good. I had a second Clary question.
Certainly.
Just in terms of just some of the safety concerns, that we've heard of, with, the rubber pellet infill. And I'd just like to know what we are currently using on the Manchester field for that purpose and what would be anticipated on the field proposed here.
So will this surface be equivalent to that being used on Manchester Field, and to the extent relevant, any concerns about the safety of that surface? Mr. Spanos.
Correct. So currently at the Manchester Field is a rubber and sand type of infill, and that's the industry standard, and that's what we were proposing for the proposed project as well. You are correct, there are different alternative infills on the market recently. There have been concerns, and the studies that have been out through Connecticut, Penn State has a good research, California, Massachusetts has weighed in, says that there's no perceived elevated risk that they can find. So currently, under this proposal, it's for a sand and rubber type of system.
Thank you, Mr. Spanos. Further on the question. Yes, Mr. Jarius.
Diab Jarius, Precinct 8. I have another question about safety concerns with the field, and not with the fill, but with the actual carpet. And I'm actually looking at a CDC webpage right now, which talks about how the fibers break down, and they break down with use, weather, and age. And when they do, they can release lead. So can you tell us a little more about what type of fibers would be used, and whether they are a type which will not break down and release lead, especially over the 12-year
Thank you,
life of this field?
Mr. Jarius. Mr. Spanos, if you could address, to the extent you have information as to the safety of the fibers, and if the Committee on Rules could look at that prohibition on smartphone access for legal research, well, that might speed things along. Go ahead, Mr. Spanos.
Yes, so the fibers do break down. They're plastic, so they're going to break down primarily through use, but also primarily through UV exposure, just like a plastic bottle, if left on the beach over time, will age and get more brittle and break down. That's how the fibers break down. As far as them releasing lead, the current generation of synthetic turf that's being installed now, at least with our projects as well, the synthetic turf manufacturer submits a certification that it is lead-free. So that's the answer.
Thank you, Mr. Spanos. Mr. Wilson.
Mr. Moderator, through you, maybe to a representative of the EFPBC, this is basically an enhancement of the high school project. The playground was already, or the playing fields were already in the high school project, and now we're talking about an enhancement, at least in some people's minds. So the question is, what's the chances that we could get this 1% of the high school project funded within the high school project rather than voting additional funding?
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. And we're just going to take a brief pause here for information for members of the public in the town meeting, and that is, unfortunately, we are not going to do anything else this evening except conclude this special town meeting, which we are going to do this evening. But when we conclude the special town meeting, we will return to the town meeting Articles 2 and 3 on Thursday evening. I appreciate the patience, especially those with the Rangeley Road Historic District, and apologize for the length of our debate, but I think these are important issues for us, and sometimes it takes time to address them. So for those here, for those issues, I just wanted to give you a heads up. And Mr. Wilson's question is there some way that this funding being requested could be incorporated into the existing funding in connection with the high school project? And he addresses his question to the members of the Educational Facilities Planning Building Committee, the EFPBC, whose chair, Mr. Deering, I spy in the audience. Mr. Deering, perhaps you could address that for us. Bob Deering is the longtime chair of the EFPBC. Mr. Deering.
Mr. Moderator and town meeting members, let me see if I can explain it this way. If the high school project was a standalone project and we did the parking lot. We would restore the baseball diamond, other than moving it a few more feet north, to basically what it is today, and it would reseed and landscape it. So we're only doing the part of the diamond that we're disturbing. So, you know, we're not really going out into the outfield, it's really the diamond and part of the outfield. So it's not a, we weren't restoring that whole field, it's just the part that we had to disturb to make the parking and move the field out. So that's, it's some money, it's probably around maybe, that part of it maybe is like $50,000 that's, that would be involved in doing that work. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
have a follow-up.
Mr. Wilson with a follow-up.
Yeah, my question is not really about the nature of the work, but the money. I'm saying, the question is, what are the chances that you can come in 1% under budget on the high school and enhance the fields and make the whole project come in on budget, on time?
So Mr. Wilson's question being, given the contingencies in any large construction project, is there some chance that by the efficient completion of that project that there might be funds available which could be used to address this particular need that's requested in Article 3?
I think what we've made a statement on, in previous meetings on this subject, we have no idea how much money is going to be left. It's a $129 million project. It's the biggest project this town has ever undertaken. So there may be, I mean, traditionally all our projects have, you know, have come with some sort of a surplus at the end of the project. And I would think if that was to happen, whatever that money is, that, you know, we would probably consider, you know, having it revert to town meeting and they could do what they want. But we won't know that until the end of the project. And so we couldn't make that commitment right now to offset any of the money for this, because we don't know. We may have some unexpected, we've run into a couple in the auditorium that was unexpected, and we still have 2 other phases to go. So at this time, we couldn't make a commitment that we could, you know, give it X number of dollars to offset this.
A possibility, not a certainty. The economic value would not be lost, as it would revert to the town coffers through other action by town meeting. Further on the question, we're going to move this forward. One more time, Ms. Kreger, and then Mr. Powers.
I just have to say, I remain very concerned about the notion that there is not a sinking fund or some way of being able to actually perform that long-term work that will inevitably be needed on these fields. Personally, as a longtime member of capital planning, knowing how short money is for capital, this isn't something that we can regularly support on an ongoing basis unless there is some basis of funding for it. So personally, as an individual town meeting member, I have to say, I don't think I can support the field. I'm sorry. I see its utility, but I don't think I can support it.
Thank you, Ms. Kreger. Mr. Powers. Stephen Powers from the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Powers.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, town meeting members. I want to give you a little history lesson on what I know about fields in Winchester. I've been in town meeting, I think 24 years, 25 years. Recently, we managed to do Manchester Field over due to fundraising efforts by private groups, Winchester Field Development. Before that, Bob Newtile and his group did over West Side Field. These fields are in poor shape. Anyone that's going to characterize these fields as good fields has not been on them. The baseball field, the outfield, is slanted, rocky, and based on the Middlesex League, probably one of the worst fields in the league. Okay, all the other fields, we now have soccer club doing something on Cross Street. But now that we have to do 3 projects together, and these projects are all together with a timeline of 2019, I think we should look strongly at doing something for the youth that we can put into a question that makes sense, and I believe Mr. Deering's group will be able to return some money. So 150,000, maybe 100, 250, this might be the only chance to do anything. And as far as the other multi-purpose fields, those fields are not in good shape either. I urge you to vote yes.
Here we go on the question. Two-thirds vote required, $1,650,000 for synthetic field at the high school, subject to bonding and an affirmative vote of the town electorate on June 9th at the special election. All those in favor of the motion as previously read, please rise. Tellers will count the votes. All those in favor, please rise. All those opposed, please rise. $150 town meeting members having voted, 100 votes needed for passage, 59 having voted in the affirmative. The motion fails. That brings us to Article 4, the last article under the special town meeting. Under Article 4, it is moved and seconded that the town appropriate the amount of $120,000 from free cash to Skilling's Field engineering account, and further, that the town manager is authorized to have oversight of said project, and that in accordance with Section 4-2 of the Winchester Home Rule Charter, the town manager shall have authority to enter into contracts and approve payments with respect to said project. This motion brought by the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you for your last vote. This is for $120,000 request to prepare papers for design specs and bids and professional services needed to do that. Thank you.
Further on the question. No bonding. A majority vote is required. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. I'm sorry. Further on the question. Mr. Conti, I apologize.
Could we hear from the Finance Committee, and could we have an explanation of why these funds are necessary if we just voted down Article 3?
Certainly. Let's get a recommendation from the Finance Committee. Mr. Melkonian.
The Finance Committee voted favorable action on this article. We recognize the consistency of approving the funds for this article in conjunction with Articles 1 and 2.
Thank you, Mr. Melkonian. And Mr. Johnson, in response to Mr. Conti's question, given the town meeting's rejection of Article 3, are these interim funds of $120,000 still necessary?
Yes, it is appropriate. This is for development of Articles 1 and 2. And if there were any money left over, it would be reverted back to the town budget, general fund.
Yes, ma'am.
Why are we spending money before we know if the town's going to approve for the funding of the flood mitigation project?
The question is, why is the appropriation required at this time prior to the special election? Mr. Howard, the town manager.
Really pertains to the timing of the engineering work that has to be performed in order to have Article 1 and Article 2 in the first ballot question work that we hope is approved, integrated into Phase 3 of the high school program. So that permitting and design has to take place now in order that the package is ready to be bid in time for the Phase 3 of the Winchester High School work in June of 16.
With a follow-up, yes.
But if the voters don't approve the financing, is that $120,000 wasted?
I wouldn't consider it to be wasted. It'd be money that would have been spent on plans that would be turned over to the town. And in some future date, if the culvert the remediation work has to happen whether or not town meeting, the ballot question is passed on June 9th. So the remediation work must be completed within that 6-year time frame that Mr. McKinley mentioned. It would be probably management, and I'm sure the board's intention to try to get that work done in conjunction with Phase 3 of the high school program, whether or not there were approval of the ballot question. So we will need that engineering work done in anticipation of that, but hoping as well that the culvert question passes together with the remediation work. If it did not, then the plans would be put on the shelf to some later date when the town would take up the question of whether or not to insert the culvert, or we would follow the lead of the board to determine whether or not the project should be paid for in some other fashion.
Thank you. Here we go on the question under Article 4 as previously read. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. The motion passes. That concludes the special town meeting. Thank you very much for your service and attention. We will reconvene the spring town meeting of the Winchester Town Meeting on Thursday evening at 7:30. We have two very important zoning bylaws to consider. A lot of work has gone into both, and would appreciate your attention. What? Oh. So we need a motion to dissolve the special town meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? The meeting is dissolved. Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Alan Iden back again with our conclusion of the special town meeting tonight. If you tuned in earlier, you realized we had the annual town meeting. We considered Article 1, which was basically reports of town officers and officials, chairmen of various boards in the town. And then after the recess, went into a special town meeting to consider 4 articles. So let's just recap what we had this evening in this first session of spring town meeting. We heard reports from the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Johnson, talking about some of the ongoing projects and outgoing and incoming members of the Board of Selectmen, talking about flood mitigation, the Winchester High School project, the Wright Lock Farm and parking downtown. He said that the Misty Valley Parkway widening project and the Central Falls projects, both related to flood mitigation, have been completed. Swanton Street Bridge and Morocco Land projects are still coming up. Chairman of the school committee, Cindy Boney, said that it's a dynamic and pivotal time for the Winchester schools. 4,500 students currently enrolled from preschool to high school. Talked about some of the figures for outgoing Superintendent Bill McAuliffe, who retires at the end of this school year, who would put in 1,480 days with the Winchester schools and oversaw $181 million in school projects. We also met Judy Evans, who's the incoming school superintendent. We heard from the Finance Committee and talking about budgets and level funding or funding within the constraints of Proposition 2.5. Talked about some of the savings the town has seen, almost $400,000 in savings on health insurance issues, also from conversion from oil to gas in town buildings, and LED street lamps, and a new agreement on waste. Said, however, the state aid has gone down by, proposed to go down by about $91,000, and they are fully funding the capital and building stabilization funds. However, she said that he said the unfunded liability for pensions is $25 million, and that's up about 60% since 2011. We heard from Planning Board Betsy Kreger. Of course, coming up in the next session of town meeting is a major move to rezone the central business district. She touched on that. We heard from the chairman of the board, chairman of the library trustees, about some of the improvements in the library, including extended hours on Saturdays in the summer and additional hour for the children's weekdays. And also the fact they've got all of Winchester Stars online and available from 1901 to 1951. Town manager Richard Howard talked about the budget. It says is minimally balanced, narrowly balanced rather. We heard some of the initiatives from the Board of Health as far as ensuring safety and prevention efforts, and reminded the residents that this Saturday from 9 to 1 is a hazardous waste collection day at the transfer station. After the recess, we moved into the special town meeting to spend, or with requests for approximately $11.5 million. The first article was a $7.5 million, $7,450,000 to put a supplemental culvert under Skilling's Field. They said that as a result of this culvert and other flood mitigation efforts, 145 of 273 buildings would be removed from floodplains and save approximately $450,000. I'm sorry, that was, no, that was, the project would save $450,000 by pairing it with the project at the Winchester High School. So again, just to restate that, it was $450,000 cheaper to do this in conjunction with the Winchester High School project. Also considered along with that article was a $4 million remediation. Now this basically, as we heard from some of the experts, was that there are a lot of contamination. There is a lot of contamination in that field. The Mass Department of Environmental Protection is requiring this mitigation. There are leads, tannery waste, ashes, leads, trash, and zinc, among other things in this field. And this would place a 2-foot cap over the contaminated soil in the field, and they're hoping that some of the field soil can be reused. Most of this contamination came from the 1900s when that was a pond, and until it was completely covered with the 3 current culverts in 1972. That was $4 million. There was some discussion of what they call the daylighting option, which was to do an above-ground culvert. However, town meeting was informed that that would be almost double the cost of putting a buried culvert in there. So what happened was there were two votes on these articles. Article 1, two-thirds majority required. 132 out of 157 passed Article 1 for $7.5 million to build a fourth culvert under the field, and Article 2 for $4 million for remediation. Now, it also has to be pointed out that this is subject to an override. This is subject. Town meeting has passed it, but it still has to pass the voters of the town. And the last item was a $1,650,000 proposal to build a synthetic turf field on top of Skilling's Field, again in conjunction with the Winchester High School project. There was a fair amount of debate on that, and that did fail to pass at this time. So that will not be going before the voters. And the fourth article was $120,000 to do the engineering on preparation for the first 2 articles, the $7.5 million and the $4 million, $7.5 million culvert and the $4 million remediation for an anticipated townwide election on tentative schedule for June 9th. So what has happened here is town meeting has given its approval to bringing these 2 projects, the culvert and the remediation, before the voters of the town. The voters of the town will then have to approve this, as it is an override. We'll have to approve the bonding, the borrowing of the money, and the bonding of these projects. So town meeting gave its approval to these 2 tonight. Projects cannot move forward until the voters of the town approve it. And that is the conclusion of the special town meeting tonight. Thursday night town meeting, regular annual town meeting will resume, presumably with consideration of the downtown rezoning proposals made by the planning board. Again, by Winchester rules, no financial fiscal issues can be taken up before the beginning of May. So we'll see you on Thursday night when you'll start hearing about the planning board's proposal for rezoning. For all of us here at WinCam, we thank you for staying with us to this late hour, and as you can hear, things are being banged around and put away, so we're going to make our exit too. My name is Alan Iden, and we thank you for joining us, and thanks to the WinCam crew tonight. Good night.